Hi everyone. So as Sang mentioned, my name is Alix FitzGerald and I'm a Group Product Manager at Betterment. Today we're going to talk about moving internally into product management. I'm going to share some background about Betterment and about my journey into product management. And then I'm going to share some lessons learned from my experience moving internally from ops into product, as well as managing two PMs, including one who's here right now, through their internal transfers, and share some tips for those of you who are looking to move into product at your own company. So first off, who out there has heard of Betterment? I know at least 4 of you that should say yes. Great. And how many of you are Betterment customers? Again, 4 of you should say yes. Fantastic. For those of you who haven't heard about Betterment, we're an online financial advisor. We manage over $13 billion in assets for more than 330,000 customers. We've got 220 employees, and we were founded in 2010. Everyone's located right here in New York. So I'm going to be talking about Betterment a lot. That's a little bit about our company. And now I'd like to share a little bit about my own journey into product management. So I joined Betterment 5 years ago as an intern during my second year of business school. Our CEO, John, came to speak in one of my classes, and Betterment really stood out to me because it was a company that combined how people actually think about money, behavioral economics, and technology, and really was doing something great for their customers. So he spoke in one of my classes, and a few months later, I sent him an email asking if he wanted an MBA intern. And luckily for me, he said yes. So I worked with Betterment throughout my second year up at Columbia. And then when I graduated, I joined full time and started on our ops team. At the time, we had maybe about 30 or 40 employees at Betterment. So our ops team was really a pretty generalist role. Now it's gotten a little more specialized, but at the time I was doing things like managing our internal budget, figuring out where Betterment was spending its money. I was making sure that our customers' money was where it was supposed to be and in the amounts that it was supposed to be. Something that's really important to our customers and to our regulators and just a good thing to do overall. And a lot of what I was doing was working to make our processes better. So working with these customers a lot from the operations perspective, I got to hear their customer pain points and the issues they were having and started to identify areas that we could make our processes more efficient. And as our team grew and allowed me to specialize a little bit more, this was really the area that clicked for me and stood out. So I started doing more product management-esque work. Every year, one of the big projects that Betterment goes through as a financial advisor is taking everything the IRS has to tell us and updating our tax forms so that at the end of the year in February, when customers get their tax forms, they're right. And everything that we should be sending to our customers is being sent to them. So I took that project on as one of my first product opportunities and worked with our engineers to make all of those update, correctly account for municipal bond dividends and whatever else needed to be done at that year. And also worked with one of our designers to make our tax forms easier to read so that customers could digest all of the super technical information. I really loved this side of my job and really loved working with product. And at the same time, we as a company decided to spin up our 401k business. So I mentioned that ops was a really generalist role at the time. It even expanded into HR. I was running our internal 401k for our employees at the time. So I knew a lot about 401k, or more than anyone else at the company at the time, which luckily is not the case anymore. They are super complicated. But because I knew about that and I had some domain knowledge and had developed this interest in product, I went to my manager and basically said, I'd like to be considered for this role. And he said yes. And so I moved into product at that point to start and build out our 401k product. I did that for about 2 years, seeing it through launch and through its first year of growth. And then this past spring decided to go and move into a whole new platform, a new customer. So moving from a B2B business, because 401ks are sold to employers, moved into our direct-to-consumer business and moved on to the mobile platform. So learned a whole new space. So I've had a lot of moves internally within Betterment in the 5 years I've been there, and would love to use this opportunity and use the lessons I've learned from my experience to share some advice as you guys are thinking about moving. I think the one constant that's always been there for me, and the reason I picked this fun Jenga photo, is that I love building things. I am not an engineer. I do not code. I do not design things. I do not build things in Sketch. But that creativity and being able to work through others and build has really been the constant that got me interested in product, and hopefully is what is getting a lot of you interested in product as well. So, first starting with a little bit of how does a PM actually spend her time? And I think that from the outside, at least from my experience, what I saw from our product managers, you see the big launches. You see the meetings they run. You see maybe the Google Docs they create. But from a day-to-day perspective, what are they actually doing? Where is this coming from? And the way I would break this down is thinking about the past, the present, and the future. And what do I mean by that? So for the past, spending time analyzing recent launches. How did they perform? Looking at the split tests that are currently running. Is our control or treatment performing better than the other? Listening to our customer feedback. So what are our customers saying? We can see all of the quantitative data, but there's a lot of value in seeing what they're actually saying, what the words that they're using. And it's working on the present, looking at whatever project we're currently running, working on it with our design, engineering, marketing, and other stakeholder partners, and defining the requirements, looking at what the success metrics are going to be, talking to our finance team and making sure that the metrics we're driving towards are in line with the financial plan, working on a launch plan, working with our product marketing team to make sure that our launch, people know about it. And then it's thinking about the future. So researching new product concepts, working with our UX research team to figure out what are we going to build next, planning our roadmap, defining our vision and strategy for the mobile product, and thinking about how that fits in the context of the broader Betterment as a company. So I started thinking about this slide as what would a typical day be? And I don't think any product manager would tell you that there ever is a typical day, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea of how a product manager spends time in a very broad sense. So moving into some of the lessons that I've learned. Starting with, I think it's important to get curious. We're going to talk about getting curious. We're going to talk a little bit about learning, a little bit more about building, and then asking for what you want. And we're going to start with getting curious. So in ops, our ops team was responsible for tracking money and understanding how it moved when it was moving from a customer who wanted to, for example, roll over an IRA and sent us a check, and then it moved through our systems, got recorded in different tables so that we made sure we bought the right securities at the right time. With ops, a lot of what I was doing is making sure that money was in the right place at the right time. And inevitably, there were discrepancies that you to go and figure out, okay, why isn't this number lining up with this one? Okay, here's the problem. So you go and you're digging through a lot of database tables. So for me, that very quickly led to wanting to understand, why did it move that way? Why had Betterment built its system the way that we did? And so I started talking to our engineers and our subject matter experts about why we had built out our structure the way we had and what that enabled us to do. How is Betterment's structure unique from other companies who were doing what we're doing or had done what we were doing in the past? And how was our structure different? By doing this, I was also talking, as I mentioned before, I was talking to customers a lot of the times in ops, particularly at a lot of painful times for them, when there was something wrong with their rollover check, or when we had to go and verify their bank account and make sure that it was the right bank account that they were sending money to. So times that could have been very frustrating for the customer, and so very quickly you got to hear a lot about their customer pain points. And what happened was I really started to get curious and started asking a lot of questions about why we had built things out the way we did and why our customers were feeling the way that they were. And I think that that's really the right foundation to start when you're thinking about starting a product career. Ultimately, all good products start from a customer problem, and so figuring out where those are and asking questions is a great way to get started. So as you think about it, I'd say get curious about your company. Understand what drives your business. What technology are you using? how does your company make money? What makes, what's the underlying business model that runs your company? Get curious about your customers, their pain points, what makes them tick, why they use your product and not your competitors, how they use your product, what purpose does it solve in their lives. And look outside your company. Look at the apps you have on your phone and the products you use regularly, the services that you use, whether they're digital or not. Why do you like them? What purpose does it serve for you? How does a company like Twitter, how do they make money? Do you think it's a good business model? We're not going to go into any specific companies at this point, but getting curious and really just having this inner dialogue, it's something that takes practice. And so the earlier you can start doing it, the more it'll serve you as you're starting to develop a product career. Over time, it does start to become second nature, and then your friends are like, why are you asking all these questions? Well, I can't turn it off. So this is really a great foundation to build on. So next up, we're here at a company that runs product management courses, and I am going to talk about learning the hard PM skills. And the reason I picked this graphic specifically is because it's one of the images that our former chief product officer shared with me when I was learning how to become a product manager. And it illustrates one of my biggest pitfalls and the things that was hard for me to learn about breaking things down and creating an MVP. I always wanted to build more. There were a number of different projects where I wanted to get to the end, get to the fantasy, like the big product vision. And what I had to work with him on and work with my team on was learning the fundamentals of being a PM, of breaking things down, of building the skateboard before you build the car. And I think that there's a lot of value in really understanding what it means to be a product manager. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot that PMs do that is behind the scenes or that ends up representing itself in a Trello card or a Jira ticket or a Google Doc or something that might not underlie all of the talk or all of the conversations and all of the thought that goes into it. And so taking the time to actually learn some of the fundamentals of what it means to be a product manager is really valuable. I think that at least for me, I looked at it before I moved into product. I looked at it from the outside and said, oh yeah, I could do that. I know, I see what they're doing. Like I know what I have to do here. And I definitely did not. There's a lot more in any job than you know. So I would say take the time to go ahead and learn that. And some of the places and ways you can do that, obviously courses, both online and in person, blog posts. Product managers love to write. Some of the great places to do this, Medium, Intercom has a great blog. There's a number of different places, Silicon Valley Product Group. Just a lot of good blog posts and reading about product, you'll start to see different perspectives. People have different styles of being product managers, different ways they think about it. There's different types of product managers you need in different roles. Some have more of a design background, some have more of a technical background, and that's what's needed for that role. So starting to learn more about it and what might fit you is really a great place to start. Meetups and events like this, so talking to other PMs that are out there. What are they doing? How did they get into it? What was their path? The one thing I will say from talking to other PMs is that there's not a straight path generally into it. It's often, a lot of it is moving internally. A lot of it is, just finding that this was an interest for them. So I'd also say talk to your team, talk to the product managers at your company and what they do and how they got into it, how they spend their time. They are a really valuable resource, and they're the ones who know your company best from a product perspective. The next piece of it is taking that knowledge and using it to build something. So using those principles that you read about, using the curiosity, you'll probably at this point have identified some sort of a problem that you could find, some sort of customer problem. And when you think about customer, this might not be your end customer. It could be you. It could be an internal tool that you think makes your life easier, makes your life more efficient. As I mentioned, on our ops team, we worked with a lot of rollovers. And around the time that I was doing this, Betterment had hackathons. We would have retreats and hackathon projects. And a couple of us decided that it would be a great hackathon project to build a prototype for a paperless rollover system. And we're going to delve a little bit into how an IRA rollover works. I promise it will be a really short overview. But generally, it works with you calling up your IRA provider, asking them to send you some paperwork. They send you paperwork. You send it back. They send you a check, or they send a check to someone else. It's a lot of headache. It's a lot of paperwork, and it's pretty confusing. And so at Betterment, we thought that we could make it easier. We thought that we could make this process a lot simpler. And so we started thinking about ways to make a paperless rollover process. And within a week, we decided that we were going to go ahead and build a prototype. So one lesson I learned pretty early in this process, and I mentioned it earlier, was it's like, great, we're going to do this for all the providers in 1 week. That wasn't going to happen. So I took some of the lessons that I had learned about breaking things down and starting with an MVP, and we went after our biggest provider first, which happened to be one that was easy for us to integrate with. And so we worked with a cross-functional team of engineers, customer experience folks, designers, other operations team members, analytics, marketing, a bunch of team members from across the company, and we built. Well, this is the final version. This is the non-prototype version, but we built a prototype of this, which is Betterment's 60-second rollover paperless IRA transfer process. And this is a product that's still in use today. Thankfully, there's been lots of iterations since we worked on it several years ago. But I think that opportunity to use some of the customer pain points I had seen and really a domain that I knew a lot about and go ahead and build something on it. This was really my first experience building something as a product manager before I even started doing the taxes and the other projects. And it was incredibly exciting. The fact that it was during a hackathon week when we were all away together made it even more exciting. But I would say take the opportunity to try out what you're learning and go and build something. It could be a new tool or a process. You don't necessarily need engineers to do this, but just something that makes your life easier. Use the domain expertise you have. Use the role you're in right now. There are problems there. There are in every job. So use the knowledge that you have to go ahead and build something and try it out. That's really the bread and butter of product management, is creating things. And so focus on your customer and figure out how to go solve a problem. And the last piece of this is asking for what you want. So I glossed a little bit over the story of me moving into our 401k business. Told you a little bit about how I was the one who was running our internal 401k at the time. And during that process, really identified a lot of opportunity and really a lot of pain from the employer as a customer perspective. So 401k plans are run by companies, and so your customer is really the employer. There's a lot of complicated things that go into testing and making sure that 401ks are regulated properly. And understanding a lot of those pain points firsthand really gave me a unique perspective into how to make this product better. So when Betterment decided that we wanted to go after this as a business opportunity, I really jumped at the chance because it was an area that I saw a lot of opportunity in, had a lot of passion for to make it better. But I hadn't been a product manager before. And so I think that's really, it's very important to go ahead and advocate for yourself and ask for what you want. Make it known what's important to you. I don't think that you necessarily, I think it's one of the most important things to moving ahead in your career, particularly when you want to switch what you're doing. Letting people know and asking for that is incredibly important. So talk to your product team. Find out what they are looking for, what their hiring plans might be, if they're open to internal transfers, what you might need to do to get there, and to bridge the gap between where you are now and what you might need to do to be there. Talk to your manager. Let him or her know what you're thinking. Generally, your manager is probably thinking about you in your current function if they don't know that you're looking to move within your company. And determine the right path and opportunity. The open role might not be there right away for you. Headcount and constraints are always an issue at any company. So even if it's not there, talk to your manager about how you could start doing more product-related work in your current role and where the opportunities are for you to start thinking like a product manager and start developing those skills. So to recap, get curious. Get curious about the products around you, both at work and the ones that you use personally. Start asking questions and thinking about customers and business problems. Learn the PM skills. I can't emphasize this one enough. There's a lot to know about it, and there's a lot that you learn on the job, but there's a lot that you can read about as well. So put your school face back on and start reading a little bit. And use your knowledge to go ahead and build something. It really doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be something that involves 5 engineers and 3 designers or anything like that. It can be something small, but getting into that mindset of creating something and thinking about how you bring it from an idea all the way into fruition is really important. And finally, ask for what you want and advocate for yourself. This is probably broader career advice than just moving inside product management, but particularly when you want to move functions and do something a little bit different, it's a very important piece of it. So that's the end of what I've got prepared. Would love to open up the floor for questions. Yeah.
I'm curious to see what, you spoke a bit about some blogs, but do you have any other recommendations for books that people can go pick up to learn hard product management skills?
Yeah, so Marty Kagan is released Inspired. I think he just released a new version of it. That's a pretty good one. The one I'm reading right now is Hooked, which is about building, it's from Nir Eyal, building habit-forming products. So it varies a little bit based on what you want to build. I think there's another one, Lean Product Playbook, which I haven't read, but Dan Olson writes that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have an educational background in finance, or why?
Yeah. Why Betterment? So my background, I went to college up at Dartmouth, and I studied econ and psychology there. So really this whole idea of understanding markets and how money moves, but econ goes ahead and assumes the rational investor, then the psychology layers on the fact that people don't behave like that. I took that and I went to work at UBS after undergrad, worked in an internal consulting strategy role and doing some business development, and then went over to McKinsey and worked in investing, worked in their investment management subsidiary. So I do have a finance background. I think one of my internships in business school was in retail, and what I really found was that I missed the finance side of it. But I moved from the institutional side of finance into personal finance because it really hit for me at the crux of money mattering to people and the individual person. Okay.
Yeah, I understand that you're coming from this background and the skill sets. What are the related skill sets, particularly to you, and what are the broader skill sets for a product manager?
In terms of moving internally, or just what's most important for being a product manager?
I mean, some people are digital.
Yeah.
And that's different from what sort of skill sets they're going to be using as compared to what you're doing here to some degree, as more of a different product development. You know, so does, what, in a way, are different products reliant on different skill sets, or is there a common thread among them?
So once you start reading enough product management blogs, you'll see the classic Venn diagram of your technical skills, your business skills, and your design or customer needs. Some combination of those three. I think that there's a couple different flavors of being product managers. Some have engineering backgrounds, like a couple of you in the room tonight, who really have great technical skills and engineering backgrounds on how to build things. Products that tend to be more data intensive, like product managers that run our trading systems, where they really need a lot of that technical knowledge, really excel there. Other ones, so getting into the design aspect of it, some people come from a design background. And so understanding user interactions and how they work with a product is a really important piece of understanding that piece of being a product manager. And at Betterment, a lot of us have more business backgrounds to understand really the impact that the products we're building have on the broader business. So even within that, our sign-up PMs and people that focus more on the top of the funnel are running a lot more experiments, some that are building more bigger products that take longer and more cycles to build, are just more focused on a bigger set of questions. Instead of running lots of little experiments, they're building a big project. So it depends on your company. So that's where I'm saying go and talk to the PMs at your company if you're looking to move internally about what skills are most valued, because it does differ company to company, and even within the company of which function you want to go and focus in on.
Another added to that, what skills did you learn that you didn't realize, oh, I need to develop this stuff? Because you said, when you walked in, you had a large learning curve, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I hadn't worked with design before, and I hadn't worked with engineering. So I had a technical mindset from my experience doing analytics and being in finance. So thinking critically and thinking about things from a technical perspective more broadly was something I had. But in terms of understanding why is this thing harder to build than that thing, I asked a lot of questions of our engineers. What's the effort required to do that versus that, so that I can start thinking about the trade-offs I have to make. And in terms of design, I hadn't worked with designers at all. So spent a lot of time working with them and really rely on my design partner very heavily to think about our user interactions and think about what the experience is for our customers and how we should move through the product. So that's one that, just a lot of spending time with him.
One more thing on top of that. Do you guys use an agile format or an agile methodology?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
As someone who has helped other product managers move into that role internally, where those people don't necessarily have a business background or a finance background, what are the sort of hard and soft skills that are probably applicable regardless of the type of product that you're working on, that I think particularly as people think about moving internally, like to develop skills that are broadly applicable so that it's easier to make those moves? So what are the things that you identified in the people you've helped to move into the role?
I think a lot of it is curiosity. A lot of it is wanting to understand how things work and then take that to go ahead and build something. So for a couple of the folks that have moved internally, the one who taught himself SQL and just started digging in and creating new processes to help our 401k business run more smoothly. And so he really wanted to understand how all of our systems talk to each other and how to help smooth out his day-to-day work and the work of the account management team that he was working on. And so really taking that curiosity and using it to solve a problem, that's probably the most fundamental piece of it. The other one is being able to work through other people. So as a product manager, you aren't actually creating anything. You're not writing the code. You're not making the designs. You're working through other people. So being able to influence others and work well with them, because you also probably are not directly managing that person. That plus the curiosity are probably the two biggest pieces of it. Yeah.
So in terms of dividing your time, where you think about the present and what product you want to build right now, as well as research for the future, understand the trends of where the product is going, how much time do you spend in terms of segregating, allotting time to the current product as well as researching for the future and coming up with a product plan for what's next?
Yeah, so I think, break down the future into a short-term and long-term future. So breaking it down into those three areas of the project that's going on right now, the project that is coming up next, and so really prepping for that and making sure that everything's going to be ready to go, and then thinking about the roadmap. I would say that is probably 25% of time. The fourth quarter of time is looking at the past, looking at what's just launched. Very rough. It does change based on, if we're doing annual planning, then I'd say 75% of the time is spent on looking at the future. But on a week-to-week basis, that's roughly about how I break it up. But there's no hard and fast rule.
And follow up.
Yeah.
So how do you measure well your product is doing? Do you have like data scientists working with
We
you?
do. We have an amazing analytics team that works very closely with us. And we look at, for each project, we have a scorecard and we've identified key business metrics that we want to move with this project. So if we're launching something that looks at signups is one of the key business metrics that we'll look at. And so we look at, you'll identify targets for whatever project we're working on, and we see how we're performing compared to those targets. Those targets can be based on past launches, which look kind of similar. It can be based on looking at our financial plan and understanding as a company where do we want to go. It can be based on a couple of different things, but we really want to set a goal that we want to measure ourselves against and see how we're doing compared to that. And the other piece of it is the qualitative side of it. Do customers love what we launched? Do they hate it? What are they saying about it? Are they sharing it with their friends? So you can't measure that as quantitatively, but it is an important piece about understanding why something's performing well or not performing well. Yeah.
If you were evaluating a member of the Betterment team from some other group, and I know you have a couple of employees, I apologize, but are you more concerned about their ability to fulfill the needs of the job right now, or their capacity to do that in 6 months?
Yeah, so that actually leads me into something we launched starting last fall, was an apprentice PM program. So basically what this is at Betterment, and we're doing our pilot right now with Daryl's our first apprentice PM. Basically, it's a way for people who want to move internally to come and work with the product team for a couple of months. I think we're working on 4 months, and embed with a squad, be a PM, but at the same time learn. So we've got sessions once a week where Daryl will go and he's watched videos and read a bunch of articles, and we'll go through and actually talk about what does it mean to be a product manager and do a product 101 session. So it's a little bit of, apprenticeship is pretty much the right word here. It's learning on the job as you're doing. So it's really combining those two. And so I think particularly moving internally, it would be hard to expect someone to hit the ground running right off the bat if they've never been a product manager before. It took me a little while to ramp up. It takes time. Yeah.
How helpful was what you learned in business school to ultimately making you move to becoming a PM?
I don't think that business school is absolutely necessary for being a PM. For me, I came from a liberal arts background. I can never say that word. Liberal arts background. And so I didn't have core skills like accounting or strategy or change management. I think the most valuable skills I learned from business school were actually much more the softer side, org change, how companies grow. But I think that understanding some of the hard skills, particularly around accounting and how businesses function, plus some of the soft skills, were really helpful to me. I don't think they're absolutely necessary to be a PM. Yeah.
I'm curious to know what sort of advice you have for someone. I'm at a pretty small early stage startup, and so there might not necessarily be opportunities to move internally because they don't, frankly, need another PM right now.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the best ways for me to, find opportunities to collaborate with the product team more, or would you advise, considering possibly looking externally for that sort of opportunity?
Yeah. So I joined Betterment when it was 20 people, and the great thing about a company that's that small is if the company's doing well and it's growing, there will be more roles in the future, and there's never enough hands for the work that needs to be done. So I think speaking up and saying, hey, this is an area that I'm interested in. I know I've got my day job, but I'm sure there's an area where you need help. Is there an area that I could stretch and make it part of my goals so that as we need a new PM, I can grow into the role? So something like that. The small companies, there's usually lots of opportunity. It just takes a little bit of time. Okay. Yeah.
How long were you in that role before you started asking for extra projects and extra work within the product side?
It was probably, so I joined in 2013. It was probably about a year later. So when I joined, our ops team was myself, another ops manager, and our COO at the time. So there were only 3 of us there, and so we definitely had our hands full. About a year later, we hired 2 more people, and so that started to open up some bandwidth so that I could start to move and start doing some other things. So that was the right time for me. Yeah.
So again, in terms of looking ahead and seeing the product's future and how things get automated nowadays, and there's a lot of machine learning and like technologies that are all going towards automation. So when you, and for someone like you who come from a more of a product background than a tech background, when you plan for the product's future, is it more a collaborative effort where all of the technical people as well as you sit down and like think about the roadmap?
Yeah.
Or if you have to do it by yourself, how much of a technical knowledge have you had to go and accumulate yourself to understand what is the future and how do you want to go about it?
So I believe that building a product roadmap should never just come from the product manager's heads. There's a lot of smart people in our company that come from different areas that have different bases of knowledge. And so we have a very close partnership between our design partners, our engineering partners, user research, our advice and investing folks, our analytics team, our product marketing team. I'm probably forgetting more people, but there's a lot of different people in the room that are all focused on, for me, mobile. And we meet all the time and we talk a lot about what's going on and how we see it from our different perspectives. And so it's incredibly important that our engineers are in the room as we're thinking about our roadmap. It's incredibly important that our marketing partners are in the room as we're thinking about our roadmap, because no matter how great something is, if you build it and no one knows about it, you're not going to sell it. So all of those perspectives are really valuable, and something I think as a product manager, part of your job is to take all of that in and think about how to really bring it together and how that all fits together into a roadmap. And if there's differences between in priorities between different folks, it's thinking about what's really most important at that time.
And how do you make this collaboration happen, like in your own way? Like how do you get your team together to talk about what's next and motivate them to like think forward?
So we have a standing weekly meeting of the leads on our mobile team, and we also, I think there's a lot to be said for the trust you build among a team. We have a lot of trust in each other, and so we all know that we're driving towards the same goal. And so we know the goals we have for the mobile product, both the business results we want to have, but also how we want the product to feel and what we want customers to be able to do with the product. And the reason that we have a lot of trust is because we've had those conversations before about what do we want the product to feel like? What does everyone think the customer problems are? And one way we'll do that is sometimes we'll write down things in advance, or everyone will kind of write on their own, and then we'll come together and discuss, which lets some folks who might be quieter write their ideas down, and some folks who might talk more, like you're not competing over each other. So a lot of that is just building a team. And when I talked about working through others and kind of that quality of being a product manager, that's a really important part of it. You aren't managing your team, but you're really facilitating all the best ideas to come out from them. All right. Thank you, everyone.